Welcome to Beyond the Metrics, where we interview customer experience executives about the most important lessons they have learnt during their career. In this episode, we interviewed Paul Stevenson, Chief Experience Officer for V2 Digital. Paul has a broad and diverse career, leading the customer experience teams and initiatives for brands such as Foxtel, Vodafone, Qantas, AirBnB and Lion. His passion for understanding consumer behaviour and leveraging that understanding to drive decision making has guided his career across his different roles, from direct marketing to solving experience challenges for customers. The thing that has helped him succeed in these different roles has been empathy. Hi Paul, thank you for joining me today. How's things going?
Fantastic, thank you. Really pleased to be here and talking to you, Mark.
Yeah, great. So how's things happening with V2?
Oh, look, it's early days. It's a terrific start. I think
Yeah.
it's fantastic to be in a startup that's scaling. That it's an exciting time. We're out there talking to clients and getting some brilliant feedback, and the message of vision to value seems to be really resonating. With our clients. So it's a really exciting time to be in the customer experience space.
So what are your in this startup phase? So what are your top priorities?
Look, I think it's a really good question. I think, top priorities are, one is we need to be ensuring that we're getting out there and having our conversations with our clients. We're making sure that what we're expecting to deliver, i.e. that vision to value that I talked to you about, which has been able to ensure that we can drive value quickly. Because as you'll know, with customer experience programs, they can be big strategic projects, and it's tricky to get things built. So we're very much orientated around building propositions that can add and demonstrate value really quickly. So that's a key priority for us. We've built some great processes to be able to do that. And then with that, obviously, we need some brilliant people. So obviously, we're hiring some fantastic people, both at the customer end, the data end, but also at the technology end. And I think that's what makes V2 really exciting for me is, I've never really owned that entire whole thing or had access to all that expertise. So I think this is the time where, we can go into a company and be able to deliver end to end and ensure that we can get underneath, some of those technical hiccups that don't allow you to deliver an experience. And that's consistent with what some of our clients are saying, be able to deliver to some of those pain points.
Okay. You have a very diverse and broad background. What would you say from that background are the most important things, or the most important thing that you've learned about customer experience?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think, I've thought about this quite a bit over the years. I think it's empathy. I think that you have to have empathy for the people around you. Let's not, in any company, as an example, you need empathy for customers. And when I say empathy, I mean, you need to understand them. You need to understand what they functionally need to be able to do, of course. You need to understand their needs, but you also need to understand their emotional state. When you think about a relationship with anyone that you have, it's not just a functional relationship. You need to understand the emotional nature of that relationship and the emotional impact a company can have on those. So, and then when you're getting something built internally, that same empathy needs to be shared and understood with all the stakeholders that are typically involved. Because as you know, Mark, customer experience it's always involves multiple stakeholders. It involves multiple parties in the organization. If you can't build an empathy for what they are trying to do in each of their jobs, you're going to struggle to get things done because it's telling, not teamwork. So I think the succinct answer to your question is empathy for customer and empathy for the people that are sort of involved in the program of work that you're trying to deliver against.
Okay. Are you able to provide an example or an anecdote of how you've applied that in your career?
Sorry, could you just repeat that again? Because I just
could
lost
you
your voice.
provide an example or an anecdote of how you applied that, whether that's in a specific project or job role, and the sort of impact and results that it achieved?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think a good example would be Lion, which is a fairly recent experience where we built a new, mobile application in the company. They'd never had really had a mobile first application in the organization. Just a bit of context was the business was at the time going through a fairly major change in enterprise software to SAP. So you've got to imagine a business under which
Mm-hmm.
it delivers produce to thousands of customers in multiple countries. And so you're trying to bring in, what we were trying to do there is we brought voice of the customer in, and we had a whole list of things that customers were asking for. So if you go into a conversation like that and you're just trying to drive a change initiative, whilst there's already a huge amount of change, which is causing all sorts of priorities in the organization and projects in the organization, you're going to struggle. So that empathy that I was telling you about is, first of all, understanding what's taking place in the organization today, but at the same time going out and meeting customers, in this case, business to business customers, vendors, pub chains, things like that, where I could get a real sense of what they were worried about in the context of the change that was coming through the SAP change within Lion. And what that helped with is it helped ensure that there was an authenticity to the
Mm-hmm.
depth of knowledge that I had in the organization around what customers were wanting and expecting, which allowed me to build good relationships internally and form trust quite early on. So that's a really good example of, and then we were able to build concepts. And once we'd built concepts, everyone knew that these concepts would work well with customers because we tested them with customers. So I think that empathy and understanding and deep understanding of what's happening in your environment and with the people that you're working with, plus what's happening externally, I think is really key to success.
Right. Because it's through the empathy that you can build trust and build the relationships that you need to drive change or the necessary
Yeah,
transformation
yeah, that's
to achieve
that's
the goals.
really, honestly, I agree. And lots of people have asked me this in the customer experience space. How do you get this stuff actually done and built
Mm.
at pace? Because that's the other thing, right? You're trying to drive change quite quickly. So you're trying to get in people's calendars, you're trying to have workshops, you're trying to get people to do things for you. You can't do that if you remain completely ignorant of how they're feeling
Mm-hmm.
and the priorities that they have in the organization. So it's very much living and breathing the whole, customer thing. So you've got internal customers and you've got external customers. So I think that's probably one of the greatest lessons I've learned over the years.
So do you think this is a key element of what you're going to bring to V2's customers and clients?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that, because I've worked in, corporates, brands, big companies for a long time, I know what it takes to get stuff done. I know
Mm-hmm.
how frustrating that is, and the feedback. And what I've always said is, one of the most frustrating things in an organization, particularly in customer experience, is actually getting something done. And
Mm-hmm.
so, at V2, we're able to help getting things done.
Mm.
So we know the things that need doing. We know the obstacles that need to be, we need to be able to get over. We know the degree of empathy we need to have internally and the experience we need to create, the processes that work, the speed you need to work, how we have to respect people's time through the process of change. And we have to move quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really, really important that we show and demonstrate value really quickly. I think that's the other challenge, Mark, to your point, there's the empathy thing, but I think the other challenge that you face in customer experience today is, and I noticed it was actually a discussion on one of your forums, was around, I think the discussion was something about how do you get your boss to agree to customer experience things?
Yeah.
Well, show some value.
Yeah.
I think be able to demonstrate value. And I think in the digital world, we're able to do that today more than ever. We don't need to build an entire mobile application to go and prove that it has value.
Yeah.
We could create a new journey or an experience and be able to research that quite quickly in a matter of weeks and be able to then, enable you to get a perspective on being able to commercialize that proposition. What is the actual behavior this
Mm-hmm.
experience is generating? And I think that's pretty much why I've joined V2, because I think we can demonstrate that sort of value quite quickly for any organization.
Uh, I suppose there's a case where a lot of companies, I mean, they're sort of committed to customer experience. They're employing the people and so forth, but a lot of people don't seem to get it quite right. Uh,
Yeah, Yeah. Sorry, did you want to just finish
No,
that
no, no.
question, or
Yeah, no,
just
that's
talk
pretty
about?
much
No,
it.
you're
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
and I think it's because most people I know that work in customer experience have a good degree of passion and energy about doing the right thing by the customer,
Hmm,
and that's great, but it'll only get you so far.
hmm,
I think I'd love your perspective as well, Mark, but I
hmm,
think today's, leaders in customer experience need to be very commercially orientated. I
hmm,
think we know that, time is money.
hmm,
Not all experiences are equal. And I think the process of being able to create, both a North Star, like what do we want to stand for as a brand, but what can we do today? And how do we leverage the technology so that we're not trying to constantly push costs up? You've got to look at, you've got to be able to look at what is practical today, set some expectations around what we can do for the next 12 months. What can we do in the next couple of months? And I
hmm,
think, if CX leaders today think more about that rather than, as an example, typically CX programs are often, trying to bump KPIs up, NPS, CSAT, time on site, whatever it is, all the different sort of customer KPIs. Those things take a lot of time to
hmm,
change. Change an NPS number can take
hmm,
months, years,
hmm,
even. But if you can demonstrate value today by picking, maybe a particular pain point in an experience and then redesigning it and building whilst you're doing broader things, I think you demonstrate value, you demonstrate commerciality, you demonstrate you've got skin in the game as opposed to
hmm,
being that agitator for change because you've got data or you've got voice of customer, and you can think strategically, but you've got to be able to execute. And I
hmm,
think execute in a way that, shows commercial impact is going to get you a lot further, a lot faster in any organization.
hmm. I'm going to ask for your opinion on something. On our subscriber base, we have a lot of people from Qantas, various customer success managers and insights, and as well as a lot of people from Woolworths and a lot of people from Coles. Now, recently, all these organisations have been flailed in the media or basically for being very uh, greedy, I suppose. It's like more coming across as being more concerned about money than the actual pockets or the well-being of their customers. Now, there's a basic fact that, well, businesses have got to make money, but what advice do you offer these organizations, right, who are obviously getting flailed, right, in the media and getting a lot of bad press, right? So what can they do to actually, because that's definitely going to damage, customers' perceptions of them, justly or unjustly. Yeah. So what's your opinion? Will there be the impact from a customer experience point of view on these companies, and what should they do about it?
Well, it's a really good question, and I've worked for some of those organizations myself, so I know exactly what it's like. I think the first way I would respond to your question is when you're in those organizations to try and not be um, too aware of and get drowned out with all the noise that's happening in the marketplace. I mean, I'm not saying you don't listen to it, but it can be hugely demotivating. I don't know anybody in any of those businesses that you're talking about that isn't trying to get the best outcome for their customers. And in some of those cases, one of the businesses you mentioned, don't forget that to shut that business down and restart it. That's not an easy thing to do. So you've got some examples of where businesses are rebuilding. I would go straight back to prioritization. It's one of the most complex things to do in an organization. Sounds crazy, but in big organizations is actually getting to single digit things that you are going to be able to do. They're going to make a tangible difference, whether that's an airline, whether it's in retail or whatever it may be. You've got to get really clear on the things that matter most to most of your customers. And so my advice to all those organizations is, and they'll all have, 50 to 250 projects that are going at any one time, and there's more projects being added on a day-to-day basis, but you've got to be able to concentrate and focus on 2 or 3 things that really matter. And it's always true in any sector, there's always 2 or 3 things that matter more than anything else. And if you can focus on those 2 or 3 things and communicate that to your customers and let them know why you're prioritizing those things, you will have a material impact on the public's perception of you. But if you sit back on your hands, and you're just listening to it and you're not responding and you're not communicating that to your customers, it's really difficult to get out of that hole.
Okay. That's great. Thank you for your time. Is there anything you particularly want to add, or any advice you want to give to people?
No, as I said before, stick at it. I think customer experience is a brilliant profession to be in today. I never think it's been more, more needed than it is today. I think as a in a time period, we've got more data than we've had before. We've got more channels of communication, more touch points. We've got AI in the mix now, which is a brilliant opportunity to add real value to those communication touch points and real deep contextual personalization. So we have a massive armory of opportunity for customer experience professionals, but stick to 2 or 3 priorities that you can deliver, I think, for me. And then also, make sure you're adding and driving value, and you're accountable for driving that sort of value commercially in your organization.
Okay. Okay, thanks. That was great. Thank you for your time, and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, you too. Thanks ever so much. Really appreciated it.